welcome to this 70-minute workshop, Somatic workshop on exploring our relationship to rest and what it is we need to guide ourselves down into rest. My name's Hannah Risco. I'm a somatic healing therapist, embodiment coach, yoga therapist. And I'm really interested in my work around how our past, how our beliefs, how our conditioning, how stress, how trauma plays out in our body, our behaviors, our emotions, and how we get to integrate this stuff and rewrite this stuff for ourselves in a way that leaves us living lives that feel honest and supported. I'm also a mum of two. I'm neurodivergent, and my own past experience with things like chronic stress have led me on this personal inquiry around relationship to rest as well, and a healthy relationship to rest. So I'm really delighted to be here with you today. So a few things before we get started. I've got a yoga mat out. You don't need a yoga mat, but if you do have a hard floor and you'll be getting down onto the floor with me, if that's available to you, of course, then maybe get a blanket, something to support your knees if you're on a hard floor. And I've got a chair here as well. So if coming down to the floor doesn't feel right or good for you, I'll also be offering a few variations on the chair as well. So and what also might be helpful is an extra layer, so you don't get chilly on those practices where we might be still for longer, and maybe a pen and paper. Some people find it really helpful to jot down things, thoughts that come through in these practices. Everything is an absolute invitation today. So if something doesn't feel right, feel good, feel safe for you, please don't push through this stuff. If at any point you need to just take a break, come down to the floor, have a walk around, get a cup of tea, like listen to that. So much of this relationship to rest is learning to listen to what is being asked of us, asked of our bodies. And I'll leave a bit of space at the end for questions and insights. So do keep them coming in the chat box, and we'll come back to that at the end as well. So today is an embodied exploration of rest, our relationship to it, and what we need for it. So as I just give a bit of an intro here, I really invite you to reflect on what is your relationship to rest at the moment. Do you find yourself resisting it? Do you find yourself embracing it? Are there times when you put it off, or you wait until you're totally exhausted to rest, like you got to earn it first? Just keeping that reflection to mind as we move through today. What is my relationship to rest, and what do I want it to be as well? So I'll be offering some practices to guide us down to rest, and explore our relationship to it. And I say guide down because I see often how this machine-like expectation of ourselves to just be able to switch off, let go. But if we've been running at pace throughout our days, throughout our lives, juggling, all of this sort of stuff that all of us are required to do often, our nervous system, our body needs time. It needs to be informed that actually it's okay to start winding down now. It's okay to start to move into these other states. And allow that stress response ultimately that we can find ourselves in throughout the day. And it's very healthy because it helps us get stuff done. Allow that to start to run its course so we can start to move into these states of rest. Because we need stress, it mobilizes us to get the stuff we need done, but stress needs recovery. Doing, giving, achieving, it needs recovery. And the more we can honor that need for recovery and rest as well, the more we can then rise to the challenges that life throw at us, but with resource in the tank. It's good for us to move between stress and rest and all that spectrum in between, because it builds resilience, flexibility in our nervous system, enables us to adapt and recover much more efficiently. And a rested and resourced human is a resilient and connected human. Our nervous system changes how our brain functions depending on whether we are in states of stress or in states of rest and digest, safety and connection. And this is why starting to work through the body in terms of our relationship to rest is really important, because our nervous system can be making our mind, our thoughts, our beliefs perceive the world and ourselves from a place of threat or rigidity or disconnection. And the more we can guide ourselves into these states of rest, the more we can start to move through the world from that place of connection, opportunity, creativity, and to act out of integrity as well. So a lot of the somatic healing pillars are around curiosity, connection to ourselves, kindness, tenderness, choice. And interestingly, these are the qualities that become available to us when we feel safe enough, able enough to go into these states of rest. We can perceive the world and approach ourselves and our challenges from that place of curiosity, from that place of compassion, from that place of choice. So these are the qualities we're going to weave into today. And I appreciate, actually, you've probably just come from the yoga class if you were joining the previous session. But the idea is we're going to start with more kind of enlivening practices and slowly guide ourselves down into slower states of rest as well. So I would invite you to come up to stand with me. If standing isn't available to you, then you can do this from seated. I'm just going to move my screen just a touch so you can see me and my head's not cut off. And we're going to start by just either taking your feet a little wider than your hips, or if you're seated here, just again, getting your knees a little wider than your hips. And we're going to start by bouncing through the feet if you're standing. And if you're seated, maybe taking the legs and shaking them out a little bit. And as you do this, there's this really natural ripple of movement coming through the body. So maybe we can start shaking out the hands as well, almost like we're trying to flick water off our fingers. And as we start to shake out the body, there's no one way to do this. You might want to stay still. You might want to move around your space. The reason that we're starting with movement is because when we're in those states of go, on, doing, actually, in order to guide ourselves down into rest, in that moment, our body's asking us to move still. So lying on the floor may not be very restful and relaxing for us because our body's still gearing up to go. But when we can meet it with a bit of movement first, we're meeting ourselves where we are. And if you want to let your shoulders lift and drop from the shoulders, maybe even go into a little bit of a jump. And so we meet that state of doing with movement. Now, as we're here, we're going to be doing this for another minute or so. Let's start to engage the breath. So in through the nose and out of the mouth through the teeth, making a sh. And keep with this breath in through the nose and out of the mouth. And actually, I want to take up a bit of space, but you might want to take your arms above your head. You might want to come down here a little bit. Just getting this ripple of movement all through the body. And when I first learned this, that when we're stressed, we meet it with movement, it was such a light bulb moment for me because I put so much pressure on being go, 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 and then expecting myself to be calm and zen-like, when actually I needed to support that stress response just to move through my system first. Now we're going to take 5 more breaths here. And let's really go to town, shaking out the legs, taking out the arms, maybe coming high or coming low. Lovely. 2 more breaths here. And then very gradually start to slow down that shape. And with your eyes open here, Maybe the breath's kind of started to pick up a little bit. Stay with that in through the nose, out of the mouth. Just start to take in the space that you're in. So letting your head turn from side to side, letting your eyes turn from side to side. And maybe even to yourself, labeling, naming a few things in the space that you can see. Noticing maybe some colors, maybe a familiar picture on the wall. And what we do here is we're using our eyes to inform to our nervous system that the space we're in is a familiar one. Stay with that breath and just keep on orienting your space. And you might even want to look behind you. Just telling our nervous system there's no lion to run from. Lovely. And then coming to a pause here, a little softness in your knees. Stay with that breath and send all your attention down into your feet. Taking a moment to notice what's left over after that little shakeout. What sensation can you notice through the body right now? Is there any tingling? Is there any pulsing? Perhaps my heart's still going a little bit, so you might find that there's a little bit of pulsing going on as well. And just drink that sensation in. Lovely. And then send your attention right down into your feet and drink up the sensation between your feet and the floor. Maybe you want to give your feet a little scrunch and a wiggle here. Just so you bring a bit more sensory feedback, a bit more sensation into the feet. And then from the feet, begin to let your attention glide up through the legs, noticing the shape of them, the volume of them, any sensation you notice here. Up through the pelvis, through the torso, right up into the chest, to the shoulders. And then as you land in the shoulders, perhaps noticing what posture you've naturally landed in. And is there an opportunity to find just a little more length? Maybe a little more softness, the back of the neck, the jaw, the fingers, the toes, the eyes. And just for one more moment with a deeper breath, just drinking up the space you're in with that wide periphery that we've created. Nice. So from here, I invite you to come to a wall or something you can push up against. So we just need enough space for our hands to be shoulder width apart. Now we're going to step, let's say our right foot back, so we're working on the same leg together. And that right foot can be about 45 degrees. And we want to be close enough to the wall where our elbows can be a bit bent. Now just bounce through the knees a little bit, soften the shoulders down. And what we're going to begin with is as we breathe in, we're going to press into the hands, press into the wall, press down through our feet, press down through that back leg. Big breath in as you press. And as you breathe out, just really gently soften away from the wall, let your hands float away. And continue like this. Now, if you're seated and you have it available to you to bring your chair to a wall here, you can do this from seating, pressing your feet down and your bum down into the chair, and take your hands this way as well. Now, as you're doing this, press and release. Press and release, moving at the pace of your breath, really putting your all into that press, that the whole body switches on. And as you release, let your hands float away. I'm going to take that twice more, pressing into the hands. And release it here. On your next inhale, we're going to press, press, press. We're going to hold this push, but keep your breath flowing. So hold the pose, but don't hold the breath. And push with all your might. Now, as you're here, my invitation to you is really to go, where in my life am I doing a whole lot of this or not? Is there any part of my life, any area of my life where I'm pushing beyond my capacity often? Now keep that breath flowing. We're just going to take one more breath here and then we're going to give ourselves a little relief. As you exhale, slowly float away from the wall, let your hands float away and just be with that other side, the aftermath of that pushing, that pressure, that effort. Where in your life could you do with a little bit more of this? Maybe come back into that push for 2 more breaths again. No, we've got to, we're often working hard. We're putting effort into so many areas of life. That's human. Life is busy. On your exhale, as you float away, where am I offering this balance? This, this recovery time. And I invite you to come into that inquiry one more time, pressing into the wall for 2 breaths. Use your whole body. Push, 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 push. Where are you using more of this? And as you release, exhale, float away. Then this. And for a moment now, just step your feet together. That slightly wider stance than your hips. Come and look around the room again. Offer that deeper breath into the body and just notice what's in the aftermath of that. What's in the aftermath of your breath? Are there any emotions that arise? And just before we move on, reflecting on if there's an area of your life where you're putting that pressure without that balance of rest afterwards to support and resource you, what's the resistance there? What might be the obstacle to that? All right. Now from here, we're going to come into a little forward fold. So if you're seated, you can make your way down either onto your elbows or all the way down if that's available to you. Perhaps letting the head be heavy if that feels comfortable and not too much. Another option is to, if coming into a forward fold with your knees soft and coming all the way down feels too much for your lower back, you can go ahead and take your hands onto a chair or the side of the sofa. And what we're looking for here is just a nice long back, a heavy head, nice relaxed toes and soft knees. And we're going to come back to that breath that we were in the shaking. So in through the nose, out of the mouth. In through the nose, out of the mouth. And we're just offering that little bit of rest and recovery after all that pushing against the wall and all that effort. But also just another moment to reflect on, not only do I give myself pause after pushing and working hard and go throughout my day, do I then allow a little bit of this and reflection time? Reflection on, wow, that's all I achieved today. That's amazing. Or do you know what? Now I've put that effort in. Now it's time to come down to rest, not because I've earned it, not that now I've worked hard, I've proved that I'm worthy and deserving of this rest, but actually because it's part of the process. Lovely. Now we're going to take two more of those shooting out breaths. Maybe give a wiggle of the jaw, a slow no of the head. Lovely. And then really slowly start to walk your way back up to stand. Take your time because, we've been pretty much upside down here. So take your time to come up to the right way round. Have a little roll and a wiggle of the shoulders. Take a moment to pause and notice what's here now. And interestingly, actually, when we come into these inversions where our head is higher than our heart, it slows our heart rate down. So take a moment. What's in the aftermath of that? And then taking your time to come down either to the floor or come to sit in your chair. And we're going to take a little bit of free movement here. So support knees, support hips and bum if you're in the chair. And we're going to start by having a bit of a wiggle. So you might want to wiggle in your hips. A little roll of the head and the neck. And for these next few minutes, where I'm going to give some loose direction, but my invitation to you is, what does the body want and need here? What would feel good? What would feel right? And so once we've had a bit of a wiggle in our hips, let's start with our left side here, with our left hand. So we're just going to move our arm around, maybe in some circles, maybe underneath us, stretching, clenching, pushing. And this is less about some sort of perfect form and more about, what does this part of my body need? What feels good? And there's often a moment when we just move listening to our body that there'll be a moment like, oh, yeah, that feels good. I want to do that a bit more. So listen to that as well. Lovely. And as we continue to, let's come back to that breath we've used before in through the nose and the exhale out of the mouth. So we're getting that exhale longer than our inhale. Let's take just 5 more seconds of giving our left arm, shoulder, left side a bit of love. All right, and then placing that hand back down if you're on all fours. Start to re-spread through the hands. Notice and tune in to that left side. Maybe take a full breath into that left side. And then we're going to take that on the right side. So starting to move into this right arm, right shoulder. And this isn't about doing exactly what was needed on the other side because, we're all beautifully wonky. So there might be one side that needs something different or feels good that on the other side it didn't. Play around with different directions. Maybe some circles, some stretching, some pulling. As I say, push and pull, we're moving within a comfortable capacity range of movement. We're not forcing or yanking ourselves into any position here. Come back to that breath if you've lost it. I know I found myself losing the breath there. And let's take just 5 more breaths in this right shoulder, right arm. Maybe even getting some space into the sides of the rib cage. And then start to let that arm come down and rest and take a moment to drink in that right side, that right arm. Lovely. Now we're going to come into our left leg here. So maybe stretching it out first, having a little roll through the foot, a little stretch through the back of the leg. Lovely. And then stepping that left foot forward if you're on the floor. If you're seated, you can take your leg out in front of you, maybe take some leg rolls. You can support your leg here as much as you need with your hand. And we're going to take, again, a little bit of free movement here. And if coming down right onto your hands with your leg forward doesn't feel good, maybe you come to the chair, a little bit of a higher support. And again, come into perhaps those circles, those stretches, those little pulses. And one of the reasons that I'm putting this in this workshop is, I don't know about you, but when I've had a busy old day, doing all the stuff and the things, and I want to rest, and then I sit down, and actually there's a lot of energy still in my system that needs, like, I'm a bit tired and wired, but also I want to rest, but my body's tense. And so offering this just a little bit of movement of like what's needed here so that I can comfortably come down to rest. Right, let's take one more breath here. And then let it go and collect that leg back. Take a moment, a pause and a breath into that left leg. And then when you feel ready, coming into that right side. And knowing that this side might look, feel, need something different to the other, and that's okay. Offering that, I'm going to come up to the chair, but you continue where you are. Find that with the exhale, that longer exhale. Because our exhale is connected to the rest and digest state of our nervous system. So our inhale brings that energy. Our inhale is the one that's connected to our fight and flight, which is often why when we're stressed, when we're on, we hold our breath. And when we're wanting to guide ourselves down into rest, it's our exhale that we want to really amplify. So getting that exhale just a little bit longer can say to our nervous system, right, it's time. We're going to move at a different pace soon. Nice. Okay. And then when you feel ready, just planting that foot down, planting that knee down, and breathing into that right hip, right leg, drinking up any sensation. And then also just letting your attention move to the whole body. So after we've given ourselves that free movement, what's here? How are you feeling? How are you breathing? What's your quality of focus? And then before we move on, we're just going to move through the spine and the body more balanced. So as we breathe in, we come into a little back bend. And as we breathe out, we come into curling through the back. I'm taking 3 more of these. And again, you can take this from seated to finding a bit of space through the front and a bit of space through the back. And then we're going to come into some free movement, just as we did before. So maybe you want to start rolling through the ribs. Maybe you want to get a bit more of that wiggling in the hips. And just thinking about how can I bring a bit more space into the front body and in the back body. And we're going to take 5 more breaths, just moving through a little bit of a free wiggle. And noticing those moments when your body goes, oh, yes, please. And you might want to go there for a bit longer. Fabulous. And then very, very gradually, we're going to either come back onto the knees. If that's no good for your knees, you can come to seated, come to the chair. I'm going to clasp our hands behind our back, not super strong. So we're like squeezing our shoulders back, just enough that it draws our shoulders back and down. I'm going to turn to face you. And then starting by just turning the head from side to side. And you might synchronize this with the breath. You might not. Maybe being curious if there is a desire to move a little faster. And if there is, what happens if we slow this down just by like 10%? And if there is that desire to speed up, where in life, where in certain areas of your life do you feel like, oh, if I go faster, I can get one more thing done? This total hands up from me. That's certainly one of mine. Coming back to that longer exhale. Nice. And then bringing your head back to center. We're going to drop our left ear down to the left shoulder. And then looking up with that right eye in particular, seeing if we can look up towards the ceiling. Stay with that deeper breath. Soften in the jaw. Letting the ear drop down and the eyes look up. Nice. Coming really gradually back into center. Take a moment in the middle. And then dropping that right ear to right shoulder. And looking up towards the ceiling. Soften in the jaw. And when we really look with the eyes as we drop down, this can set off a reflex that releases charge in the nervous system. So you might find like a yawn comes as you do this. If a yawn or a sigh comes, then just know that's your nervous system just letting off a little extra charge. Beautiful. Come on back to center. And then just have a little wiggle and release here. And then taking our hands onto our lap, maybe palms up or down, and just noticing with eyes open or closed. Eyes closed isn't for everyone, that's fine. Choose what's right for you and notice what's here now in the aftermath. In this little pause of rest. And for these next few moments in this pause, before we go and move on into action again, let's come into that big deep breath through the nose. Hold at the top for a moment, and then as you let it go, sigh or yawn or or whatever is the most satisfying way to let that exhale go. And take two more of those big, rich, deep inhales, almost like you're filling up like a fresh glass of water. And then sigh as satisfyingly and as loudly as you can. Lovely. Now we're going to stay seated. I'm going to come into a cross-legged here. Again, if you're in the chair or want to move to a chair now, you can. Make sure your knees, your hips are happy with that. And we're going to take one hand to the belly, doesn't matter which one, and the other hand to the chest. Now, with this hand at the chest, we're going to reach it all the way over to the opposite shoulder. And the hand at the belly, we're going to reach it all the way to the opposite side of the waist. And just take a moment to soften down through the shoulders. Lower the chin down. With eyes open or closed. Again, whatever feels right and good for you. Just taking a moment to really apply this tender touch. Our relationship to rest, how we rest, is a part of nurturing the relationship we have to ourself as well. I offer that deep inhale into chest, into belly. Allow that exhale to soften and land down too. And I wonder if through this quality of touch that you're offering right now, whether it could communicate, I'm listening, I'm here and I'm listening. And as you hold this tender gesture, this little hug, does this feel familiar or unfamiliar or somewhere in between? Offering any unfamiliarity or resistance, that breath. Offer it the breath. It's understandable that we resist slowing down. It's understandable that we resist rest. Life is busy, it's complex, it's stressful sometimes. And so that resistance is real, but also this commitment to our care is real as well. Fill this little embrace with those big inhales and those long landing exhales. Just holding whatever is arising for you, whether that's in emotion or thought, quality of focus, sensation, tension. Perhaps even letting the chin drop down a little more, letting the spine just roll in a little more. With wholehearted curiosity here, where might you benefit from a bit more of this? A bit of that care, a bit of that respect for the need to pause, respect for that need to rest. For those of us who hold resistance to pausing, resistance to resting, not just when we really need it, but it's just part and parcel of our day. And then getting those sighs or those yawns coming out for these next few exhales. How could this quality of care support your ability to rest? And then slower than the slow, begin to release that embrace, unfurl the spine, find a bit more length, maybe have a little wiggle and a roll. Lengthen through the back of the neck. And just as we did earlier, just take a moment to take in your space. Name a few things in your room that feel familiar. Maybe there's a color in a picture that you particularly like. Lovely. And then bringing everything back to center. Now, before we move into some breath work now, we're just going to give ourselves a little squeeze down from the shoulders, down through the arms. And again, you might synchronize this with the breath. You might want to move a little faster. That's okay too. And back to that longer exhale. And we're just going to play with this little bit of body squeezing just for a few more moments. Maybe you want to get up into the neck a little bit, offer any knots or little tight spots. A moment of air. And then simply just tuning in to these two qualities of pressure, push, squeeze, and then the gradual releasing, the relief. Placing on that pressure and then gradually releasing it and relieving it. Now we move through these states of do and soften, inhale and exhale constantly throughout our day. We need both and everything in between. Lovely. And then once you come down to the hands, let them rest down on the lap for a moment. Take a moment to just check in. What's it like to be you right now? Has there been any change in your state from the start of the session to now? If you feel exactly the same, that's totally fine too. And just being curious, our body holds wisdom and guidance. It's telling us what it needs, what we need. But we need to set these conditions in order to listen to it. And then taking a hand, it doesn't matter which one, the invitation is to place it onto the center of the chest. Now, if that isn't available to you or placing hands on the body doesn't feel quite right, then you can hover the hand or you can simply direct your attention here. And begin by simply noticing the outline of the hand if it's placed there. If there's any warmth, sensory feedback, and then begin to offer the breath to that attention, offer the breath to that touch if it's there. And this can be in through the nose or in through the nose and out of the mouth. Following that rising, that lifting of the in breath, and that turning and landing of the exhale, of the out breath. Now, as this becomes a little more familiar, this is the next practice. It doesn't get much frillier than this, where simply directing our attention to the center of the chest, to our heart, our beating heart, and imagining now that the inhale is traveling directly into this space and directly leaving this space. And so if you have the hand there, perhaps even manage it, imagining the breeze of the breath traveling under the hand into this space, the breeze of the breath under the hand as it leaves the space. For those visual among us, maybe imagining a light traveling in and a light traveling out. And again, perhaps closing the eyes or letting the focus soften down. And we let our attention rest simply with this simple path of the breath for these next few moments. And then as we stay with this steady breath, this connection to heart, I invite you to bring to mind recent, maybe in the last 2 weeks, a moment that brought a bit of light to your day, maybe a bit of pleasure, calm, maybe a moment of connection with another person, a moment where that spring sunshine that's been teasing us these last few weeks came out. And letting whatever that first thing that comes to mind, let that be the one that you connect to here. That moment that brought a little bit of light to your day. And over every following round of breath, it's like we're turning up the gauge of how vivid that memory is. You bring that memory to the forefront. What colors did you see? What sounds, smells were in the air? What emotions were present in that moment? And so these next few breaths are really turning the brightness of that memory. We're inviting it back into this moment right now, inviting those feelings, sensations back into the body. And so let's continue to turn that brightness of that experience up, inviting it into the now. And then taking a moment to notice how it is to be you right now, having connected to that glimmer, that resource, that recent moment. What do you notice in the body by way of sensation? Maybe the quality of your focus or feeling. How are you feeling? How are you doing? How are you breathing? The ways that we can call upon these resourcing moments, they can be simple moments that we can call upon, remind ourselves of, bring into our experience right now. This brings safety and resource into our nervous system so that actually we need to feel like where it's safe to rest. Uh, it's available to us. So taking moments to connect to these past moments that bring a bit of gratitude, a bit of light, and support our ability to go into rest. Like, yeah, all that busyness, all that doing, maybe the day threw me a few curveballs. But actually, I can welcome in a bit of this resource too, so that I can start to guide myself down into that necessary rest, that necessary care. And then we're going to let go of that focus on the breath. If the hand was there, we're going to place it down. And enough invitation here to either come down to your back or to your sofa or to the chair, wherever you can be comfortable, just for these next 2, 3 minutes. Make sure you're warm enough. If you're on your back, grab a few cushions off your sofa and have something underneath the backs of your knees just to give a little bit of extra support to your lower back. If, like me, you've got the sofa right here, you might want to go ahead and put your feet up on there. So take a moment to choose your spot. You might, after that practice, go, do you know what? I just want to stay seated exactly where I am. Notice if intuitively you want to place your hands on the body or you want your hands nice and wide and out. Try both. Try a few different options and see which one feels like the right one. Is what we need from one day, even 1 minute can change what we need. So certainly when we come back to those practices time and again, make sure you ask, is this the right way for me to do this today? Or is there something else that is needed? And allowing the breath to flow steady, flow comfortably. If you're on your back, noticing those contact points all along the back body. If you're seated, the same goes. Notice the back line of your body. Maybe the breath moves the back body too. Notice the support underneath you, and the steadiness of that support. And now bring our attention into the left side of the body. Fill your attention with the whole left side of the body, almost like someone's drawn a line down the center of you. Fill the whole left side of the body with your attention. Drink up this field of sensation, which is the left side. And then really gently start to shift your attention into the right side. Feel your attention, that field of sensation in that right side. How is this right side responding to this moment of pause, this moment of rest? And then as you next breathe in, let your attention flood out to include the left side, the right side, the back line of the body, and the front side of the body. This whole field of sensation, aliveness, this incredible body. And just take these next few moments, let all that you've offered yourself this morning some time to settle. This gentle journey towards rest, towards, a welcome pause. knowing that this is allowing our body to build up that resource to allow us to move into the busy, the doing once more when it's needed. Remembering we can go to that place, but also we can arrive back here. We can guide ourselves down back to these moments of pause, of rest. And coming back to that little inquiry that we started with, what is the relationship that you want to have with rest? And some of these inquiries that we went through today, what are those areas of your life that actually we could do with a little more of this to resource and support us, to allow us to show up in the ways that we want in our lives? What do you need to start bringing about that sense of balance between these two so that we can rise and then we can retreat? And for these last few moments, what are the conditions that you might need? What are the things that you might need in order to start meeting this resistance to rest? What do you need to remember, remind yourself of? All right, so from here, we're going to begin to actively breathe in a little deeper here. Almost sense that breath filling right from the tips of your toes to the crown of your head to the tip of your nose, to the tips of your fingers. Fill up the entirety of you with that in breath. And then exhale in the most satisfying way that you can. And let's take one more of those. Fill yourself up like a fresh glass of water right to the top. And then let it go. And then begin to invite some wiggles, some stretches, some yawns back into the body. And then taking your time, there's no rush here, to begin to bring yourself back up to sit if you're not there already. And if the eyes are closed, just gently start to blink them open and take that moment just to send those messages back to your system. Look, I'm in this familiar space. Looking all around the room. And then come back to center. Notice how it is to be you now. Have there been any shifts in your state from where we began to now? And then I just want to close this by saying a huge thank you for joining me this morning. A huge thank you for joining this session and supporting yourself in this way. I really hope it was